Hello again, chatters. Hello again. Some small changes as we were probably going to start a Minecraft stream, but things didn't turn out that way concerning the previous stream, and it's exactly concerning that we're going to talk about in this just chatting thing. And the reason is the like previous half an hour, 1 hour and a half content, or at least 2 hours, I don't know exactly, which we previously streamed, forced us to do this. And today the topic will be obviously concerning AO2. So we're going to just place that. I'm sorry, still having this. So exactly, it's concerning this game, Age of Empires, that we're going to talk. And we're not going to have any mercy because, at times it comes, it's just unacceptable the things we see. And for those who already kind of like know us, uh, you know that we're absolutely uncomplacent with things that are wrong, and this extends to not just things offline, to things online, especially to things online. And so today we're going to, like, of course, we're not going to do very fancy videos, but this will be the reason why basically I refuse to stream AO2 content uh, because of so many underlying problems. And the first issue I'd like to address is probably the prevalent toxic behavior, which I've seen like online. So I'm going to use like a small guiding thing. I'm going to make a small notepad thing. And with that, we're going to just kind of like organize our topic. We're going to organize because, you know, there's so many things, and not just things and information, but so many wrong things that I'm abysmally just repulsed to see, witness, and experience. That for those who know me, they just say, they know that I can't be silent and I can't be quiet and pretend everything is good when everything is but good. Everything is not good. So we're going to talk about first issue, the prevalent toxicity. The prevalent toxicity. We'll just add a small text. I'm going to replicate here. And that's the first thing today we're going to talk about, that prevalent toxicity. Let's just see if I'm using the right text box. Yes. Prevalent toxicity. Well, that's our first topic we're going to talk about. The prevalent toxicity in this game. And the reason is uh, we just came from like 1 hour and a half session, and between harassments, just bullying, insulting, disrespecting, facing mega smurfs, it's just unacceptable. Now I'm not going to review and post additional evidence. For those who play, they just know I posted like videos on there's on that on the YouTube channel, and I post those videos not because of things I love, but because of things I'm abysmally repulsed by, things that I cannot agree with. And it's about Smurfs, people who stomp on other players. They pretend to be of a certain elo, but they're not. They're like 5, 6, 8, 10 times more elo. and they just systematically they come on the lobbies to just matchmake with you. So it's like the problem of the players whose main hobby is to just go around on the internet and check if the players, specific players they want to target are online or not. And if those players are online, they're just going to snipe after them. They're just going to matchmake on the 1v1 system. And the point is just to steal points from those players. So we can add that as well. This prevalent toxicity has different, different aspects. So first you have the Smurf issues. The Smurfs, basically, for those who don't know smurfing, and obviously there are not innocents in this subject because this is a long time problem. Uh, these are players who lie to their opponents concerning their skill ability. For example, you create a new profile, but you're, for example, with 1k elo. I think that's the standard elo start. But you play it with your 3k elo skills. Something like that. So this, I think it's standard with D, but whatever. You get the point. Okay, let's just place the D. This is a first problem. Every time you're ranking on the 1v1 ladder of that game, so you go multiplayer, ranked, and then there's a certain set of options, which you can obviously see on my videos. You can have 1v1s, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4. And when you go for 1v1s, especially 99% of the times, if not 100% of the times, you're likely facing a Smurf profile. And that is, the Smurf is a player, as I said, that it's just a pro player, a very experienced player, whose main hobby is to just stampede and bully and harass lower elo players. Like 90% of the times they're online, and generally these Smurf players, they're constantly playing the same game. They will be always on the lookout, like preying. That's the term. Preying and hunting in order to snipe uh, either new players who come and just, those who in good faith create new profiles, and they play with a standard 1 kilo because they start to play like normal players. And these players, they're constantly facing the Smurf players. So we're trying to see what kind of players uh, the so-called uh, what kind of players the Smurf players are facing. I know this is kind of like complicated, but I think the best way to tackle this is to attack it bits by bits. So for example, let's just say another one. Okay, this one. So the kinds of players that you might see concerning the Smurfs, the Smurf player is always he's sniping. He's always looking on the yellow ladder, he's queuing in order to matchmake with other opponents. And he will constantly face much lower elo opponents. What kind of opponents might he face? So these are what I call the players in good faith. The players in good faith, of course, they are, just wait a second, I'd call this the normal players. The normal players, they're just around, the kinds of players you expect to see on the internet. And when I say normal players, I'm referring, for example, to players who, uh, like, they don't play probably less than 8 hours, less than 8 hours of video games per day, guaranteed. And there are no pro players. Uh, Sometimes they play like 1 or 2 days per week. And it's these kinds of things which you can expect to understand. So these are the first type of players uh, the so-called Smurf player is going to face in the beginning. I don't have here any specific drawings I could do. I could make, for example, an arrow from Smurf to this, and I think it's pretty much acceptable. The normal players, they're the ones who have no possibility to fight a Smurf. So exactly, what is a Smurf on the other side? The Smurf on the other side, let's use it, sorry, not this, Control Z, I think this will work, yes. Uh, I think it's this. No, that's not this. What exactly? Ah, okay. I knew I was not pressing the right one. I pressed this one. Please be mindful with me because I'm not a super professional thing here. Not doing this. Delete. I think it's this one. I have to paste the duplicate. I think that's the thing. And now, right. Oh yeah, basically we're working on the same reference instead of working with a duplicate. That's why we were erasing on the two places. Now the Smurf player. The Smurf player is as toxic as you can see. It's the exact opposite. Uh, he has thousands, like thousands of hours of gameplay. He plays the game for 1,000 hours at least. Thousands of hours of gameplay. And he obviously is much more experienced as a result of that. Pro players. And when I say pro players, I usually say high pro players. You can imagine the disparity of this. It's not just professional, it's very streamlined, trained professionals. And they probably play most of time in a week. Like, I would say these kinds of players, they play almost every day for years. And that's as toxic as it is. You're not seeing it all, obviously, because you're just trying to fit in my windows. So you already can see how this is going to be very much imbalanced. Obviously, for each player, it's going to be a bit different, but this general, this kind of like, uh, this matter is kind of like, you can generalize to every situation where you have a Smurf player encountering a normal player. So whenever you have either a new player that tries to find an account, he will play against this kind of player. Player with thousands of hours of gameplay experience. and not just a pro player, someone who does play video games for a living, but someone who has been playing video games for a living like since early teenagers every single day, like a fanatic crazy. And probably you just have a normal player on the other side. And that normal player on the other side is playing against someone who knows every single thing by heart. So like he's not just going to struggle, he's going to be feeling mega overwhelmed. Now you might say, okay, but yeah, if he's a normal player, like he will learn and he will get good at. No, you cannot, because if you read things, you see that the Smurf player has not 100 hours more playability than the normal player. He has thousands hour already. It's like already you start, and I'll use this analogy. I'll add more space for this, like to work with different contents here. Paste duplicate, and that thing will be basically uh well, I was talking about, yeah, this Smurf profile. Excuse me, because sometimes this is just too many things at the same time. But what we faced forced us to take a stance. It's not right uh, to go for video games and to just fight opponents who are 50 times more skilled than you the whole time when you're supposed to start like kind of like balanced. And especially to face players whose main aim is just to stampede and to bully others. The main objective is not to win games, it's just to bully others. So we actually can add the new players. These are the sort of players that can also be facing Smurfs. And for obvious reasons, we're going to add the new players. The new players are also forced to face Smurf players because they create a profile, they try to play a game, and they realize it's completely unplayable against those professionals. Now, we were talking about the skills gap, and that's an issue, the skills gap. We're going to change this to another thing, another color. So, the skills gap. Massive skill gap. I'll add this into red. This is a problem because every time player, well, I did something wrong here, obviously. I think it's, I think, yeah, I can add this here. You already know that. Maybe I just need to add more. This one, copy and paste duplicate. And I'll change this. No, at least I'm not harassing, I'm not bullying others while doing this. And that's why I feel well about myself. So I don't come here saying any moral lessons concerning you because I know what I'm doing. You have the new players. I'd also like to say that it's completely different to make content without having trigger situations than making content when you're doing it under trigger situations. And obviously this is a reactive video. You obviously know what reactive means. Reactive means that I'm forced to do something which, in normal circumstances, I probably would not be doing because the environment has forced me to do that. We're not free in this world. We're not free. Right. I was talking about the new players. So the new players, or the normal players, will be constantly facing these Smurf players, whose main aim is to just stampede, bully, and harass uh, the lower elo players. And not even the new players will first need to become like normal regular players before they ever attempt any significant change. And that alone takes like years. Because again, this is another problem. We'll add, how is this massive skill gap explained? I tell it that the analogy is like, uh, I would call it like a race analogy, where where the Smurf, like a race analogy where like, imagine it's a marathon. Let's make a marathon analogy. It's better because it's something that takes a long time. The Smurf has already 90% of the race. The rest, new players, start at 0%, and the normal players, 20%. That's how it is. There is no better way to describe the massive imbalance that I see in this game. I use the marathon analogy because imagine that you're doing a competition where your opponents are about to win the race, irrespective if you play or not. If you play, they win the race. If you don't play, they win the race. And it doesn't matter how you train or how much effort you put into it. The Smurf has this thousands of hours of additional gameplay, making it impossible, manifestly impossible, for any normal player to even attempt to reach the playability of the Smurf. Like, he might win one game in 10 games, or one game in 20. But to win one game in 20, it means that you will have to play 20 games, and 19 of those games will be probably losses, or if not certain losses. So it's already discouraging for a normal player, for a normal player. And even for the so-called pro players who don't have these thousands of hours of gameplay and start late, they still will not be able to catch. Like, I would call the pro players facing a Smurf, a massive Smurf, they like have 40 to 50% of the train. So there could be some of you ask, oh, then how can you become from pro player to Smurf? You don't. You don't because the Smurf player is exactly the problem. These are, I would call the scum of the earth. They started since very little, like everyone else, new players. But they don't start as adults. They started as little kids, constantly playing every single time. Those kids, those rugrats, they're not even kids, they, instead of focusing on trying to do something useful with their lives, excuse me, because that's what the case, people and kids who play AO2 99% of the time, so there's something wrong, okay? There's something wrong. They pass years and years within their childhood and their teenagedom and until adulthood to play just AO2. They know nothing in life except their toxic computer box and AO2. They're like child soldiers, they're trained just to do this. That's a problem. And that's how they become the Smurfs. Because they've been growing, not just playing video games, but playing video games the whole time. The whole time. They didn't apply in school, they didn't apply in their hobbies, their the things they like, they didn't apply into trades, they didn't do anything. They just AO2, AO2, AO2. And obviously that's just a sign of something extremely wrong. Extremely wrong. Now you might say that it's okay, it's normal, because everyone makes their life choices. It's not normal if you're a kid and you need to play thousands of hours. So that when you become an adult, you have billions, if not hundreds of thousands and millions of hours more than any other player. For example, I consider myself in the realm of the normal to pro players because, like, I've had my life when I was, I'm not, I already have 30 plus years old and that, but when I played AO2, I didn't play with the aim of just playing AO2 25 hours per day. I had my life, I had school, I had duties, I did my own things, my work. And in order to have a life and to do my real life stuff and work and to try to build my, life aspirations and all, whatever you call it, it would be impossible to play more than a certain set of hours of AO2 per day. When I was a kid, of course I wouldn't, because I placed my life first. I played, for fun, like other games. There were other games I played, but I never played as if my life would depend on it. And the problem is that at the time, unaware, obviously, in bliss of ignorance, which I lived, I was unaware that there were people who were just playing it non-stop, like there's nothing else in the world. And excuse me, that's sickening. Uh, so it's like, it's not those people are getting good as adults or because they played as adults. No, they played like since kids. Instead of doing other things in their life, instead of learning, instead of focusing on their trades, they just focus on the video game. And that's how you have Smurfs. Now you might say, okay, but some of those were not kids, and it's only once they become teenagers that they start to play. Yeah, but considering that this is already an older game, and considering that uh, there's a lot of stratification, and I also can say this is a problem. Uh, let's add exactly something else here. One other problem is concerning the ladder. It's the ladder. Uh, you can call it stabilization, but I would call it ladder ceiling, stratified. Well, it's not the best term, but it works. The ladder stratification. It means that it's a bit like the medieval orders. You are born in a place, you will live in that place, you will die in that place. Your grandfather was a shoemaker, so your father will be a shoemaker, you will be a shoemaker, and your son and the sons of your sons, if you have them, will be shoemakers. It's the exact same thing here, which I'm talking, the ladder stratification. The ladder within this game, in terms of the best 100 players or 200 players, has hardly changed in the course of many years. You might see one or two moves, but it already gives you a sense that the players who are on top, and considering their ages, they started to play this as very little. So if they themselves are Smurf players and Smurf accounts, they have Smurf accounts. Most likely, of course, they have. Uh, you can see the problem. Because imagine if the top players, exactly, that's the ladder stratification is not just as a result, of course, by top players. That's the point I want to say. The ladder is completely rigged and unbalanced because you have players who endlessly create Smurf profiles, and those are the so-called top elo players, the top ranked players who are constantly making new profiles uh, and playing with in those new profiles with their highest topmost skills. So like if, imagine you have your player that has your that who's where your elo is like 2.8. That's your highest 1v1 elo in the profiles you want. There is one profile you have 2.8k. But since you feel like you need to stomp other players, or because you don't want to have competition, what do? You see that new players are kind of like interested in Age of Empires 2, that they are creating new profiles, but you want to make sure that they can't even climb as near as your rank. So you're going to artificially rig the competition by forcing yourself to matchmake against the much lower elo players, the newcomers, the new players, or the normal players who are starting to build profiles, because you want to make sure that these players have no chance at all in rising the ladder, because you want to artificially rig the ladder. You want to stop these players from rising. So what do? As a 2.8k elo player, you create not just one or two, dozens of more Smurf accounts. That's what I'll be acting here, uh, creating dozens, hundreds of Smurf accounts by top players. Uh, in let's just say uh, below 1k. The reason is simple. You want to prevent competition. And the quickest way to prevent the competition is to just stop these players from ever having a chance to rise. So let's assume that either these new players and these normal players, if they would not be facing Smurfs, if they would be facing counter players like who had similar ranked experience, they would probably rise some, probably they would get to middle ranks like 1.2, 1.5k until that point. Let's assume they would get there without in the absence of smurfing. But as a result of these players constantly, if not permanently, facing uh, smurf opponents, what will happen is that these players can never win this game, the games they're facing. They will lose every game they will be matchmaking. And if they win a game, it's because the Smurf instantly quits as soon as the game starts in order to keep his win-lose ratio, because that happens too. You know, players who quit on game start, uh, and you know, it's that quit that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't because it's not to make any sense. They do it just to keep their win rate at exactly the percentage they want, like 50 or 51%. And there was another interruption, but that didn't stop me from coming back. It just had to go away. But I will not go away with this talk, and I will continue with this as long as necessary because some people like to just put wax in their ears and, excuse me, they have a problem. Uh, these are just facts, you know. We're like tired of saying this either in game or in chat or with other people. This comes from our experience, but uh, it's accurate, it's truth, it's useful, and we're just tired that every time we go to play this game, we're constantly facing harassers, and this is just one part of the harassment. You know, the Smurfs, people whose main aim in the game is not just to win games. No, they kind of like create hundreds, if not thousands, of Smurf accounts just to make sure that any other player that is not already a Smurf player or not already from the cast, let's use the term cast, of pro players, they have no chance whatsoever of rising. And for me, it's clearly simple. In order for you to Smurf, you already need to be highly pro players. So when I see the top letter of the so-called highest player, highest punctuated gamers, high gamers who have the highest ranks, I get suspicious because it's always the same. And what kind of game where players are always the same, the same? The winners are always the same. The years pass and the winners are always, 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 always the same. It's rigged. I mean, you cannot be good to the point where you always end up being the first every single time. It comes from natural experience that you win some games and you lose others, and where you constantly have been winning because you kind of start losing games so that you don't look as suspicious as before. But if you have been winning constantly the whole time, using different profiles, then excuse me to say, you're cheating. You're cheating. It's not because you're good, because even good players lose. If you're too good to not lose, you have been cheating. And that's the situation where I believe most pro players are. They are just too good to be true, and the reason is that they've been playing non-stop since little. Obviously, they are too good, but you cannot be too good out of normal. A normal player eventually can become semi-pro after a few years. But assuming that these normal players are not teenagers that spend 8 hours a day playing video games, because I think it's not the case. Like as adults, people who come and play normal games, they will never match this level. They will never be able uh, to fight competitively against Smurfs. But they will lose most of the times. So that's exactly why I think that there is nothing to learn from Smurf players. There is no learning curve. So I'll just have like this is the first conclusion. We'll be adding that. So you know, because this will be on the video thing, we'll just change this. I'll keep the massive this analogy on the side. I know it's starting to become, you know, with content, but at least it's not toxic content. It's just the truth of what we face. And so I think what we can add here, there is no learning curve possible. This is an important conclusion that for all these normal players and new players, what I think constitutes the main base players of AO2, and even to some extent the pro players that are not big Smurfs, They know that every time they were going to face a Smurf, there is nothing to learn. The only thing to learn is that they learn the only way to win the game is to stop playing the game against a Smurf player. There is nothing you can learn with a Smurf, and those who say that you can learn, they're fooling themselves. You learn that they just bully around, and that's another aspect. So exactly, what could be the causes of Smurfing? I can add that into another uh, like thing here. I'm going to change this into what I want to write. Well, what? No, not this. I thought I did make a duplicate. Okay, now I'm going to change this. Right. So the causes of smurfing. It's definitely one of the issues we're going to tackle. Why exactly do these people smurf? We know that they this creates imbalance. You know, the smurfing thing creates imbalance. Obviously, that's the outcome. You know, with smurfing, there is no learning. There's just no learning you can get. The objective is just either to ruin other people, to make sure that they cannot climb in the yellow ladder, make sure that they don't have any fair game, and to eventually make them quit the game. Because let's not pretend ourselves, let's not fool ourselves. The objective of smurfing is to push away people from the game. And you cannot say that, oh, I smurf, but I don't want uh, to put people out of the game. Sorry, that was a copy too much, but we'll try to tackle about the causes of smurfing. One of the things is just it's not forbidden. It's needless to say. If you can do stupid things, you will be doing stupid things. I think this one is so obvious, right? It's not forbidden. Well, but you might say, if it's not forbidden, but I still need an incentive to do it. And the reason is, we've already talked about this. Artificially rigging competition. Exactly. What would you prefer if you were Standard Oil and you could have a monopoly on oil and stop any other new players to enter the playing field of oil industry? Of course, you would stop them. You would try to bankrupt those industries so that they could not compete with you, right? The monopoly. And that's exactly what happens here in AO2. The top established players since years, knowing that they can have competition, of course they can have competition, they decide to create as many Smurf accounts as possible. If necessary, they'll create as if there's no tomorrow. They'll just create Smurf accounts, uh, so that any potential climbers in the normal players, in the new players, anyone who could be a potential promise, is constantly forced to matchmake against the Smurf players who instantly cancels them. So you can already see what's going to happen for those players. They are going to artificially have their ranks like climb down, while the Smurf is artificially going to climb up. But look at the following. The Smurf will not create one profile. It will do that. It will do that. You will always like have dozens of different profiles. Like for example, in a profile, you will be like 800 elo. In another, you'll have another Smurf profile at 820 elo. In another at 830 elo. Another at 835 elo. And you can imagine. They are always sniping on the ladder. They don't have a profile at 800 elo and another disperse at 1000 at 1k. No, they're everywhere. They make sure to have a profile so that they can snipe every player they want to attack everywhere on the ladder. And obviously they're tracking the players. They know where to target. For example, if the player they want to target is 1.2k, they will lose their 1.1 to 1.3 K Smurf accounts. And that's how they will target it. If the player rises more, they will continue to Smurf him. If he climbs down, they will continue to Smurf. And obviously, it's an issue because it rigs the competition. For those players who are constantly matchmaked against Smurfs, are forcefully robbed from elo because they can never win against them, and the Smurfs they constantly up their elo. But the problem is, the Smurf is not going to use his main profile, which could be 2.8, 2.6, 2.7k, and it feels like, okay, that player is just stable in his own elo, is playing against other players who are 2.6k, but in fact that player is using the dozens, if not hundreds of Smurf profiles he owns to matchmake constantly and bully and harass lower elo players. And that's a problem. They're rigging the competition, basically. Because if you can force thousands of players below 1k or in the 1k vicinity to never be able to climb to 1.6 because they're forcefully facing 2k or 3k Smurfs, it's obviously disgusting. And that's rigging. That's just rigging the competition. It's unfair, it's biased, it's repulsive. But it's being done. And obviously I cannot agree with that. So that's one of the causes of smurfing. And another thing is that that's one of the causes of smurfing. But another one, and this one is also touches to the core, uh, free harassment. This free harassment under the Smurf mask. I call this like the keyboard warriors. That is, because they cannot know who you really are, and I mean in terms of AO2 player. For example, you create a profile called Potato Skill, but you're playing like a 2.8k player, 2.2k 2.8k player exactly, and because you're using that Smurf account, things become easy. You don't have to worry about that because it's potato account. So if it's potato account, you can do anything you want. You can you can play with your 2.8k player skills against a new player or against an 800 elo player or 900 elo player, whatever, and you're always going to stomp them. And the players which the Smurf is facing, they will never be able to know the real identity. So it's like the Smurf knows who he is, he knows his identity, he knows his playability skills, and he probably also knows the opponent. But the opponent that is not Smurfing, he doesn't know that he's facing such a big Smurf. Because like it would be different if you would know, like, for example, the real identity of the player you'd be facing. It's completely different if you're facing an opponent which you know and you can expect a certain kind of playability from him than to face an opponent that hides behind a mask, like a coward, like a rat, like a disgusting piece of shit, who needs to pretend something else to you because he feels well cheating, uh, lying to you, and laughing on your face. And he can do that because he's using the Smurf mask. It's like a keyboard warrior, you know? You don't see the identity of the person insulting, you don't see the identity of the person harassing. So that person just harasses and harasses and harasses. They feel like invincible. Now, these are the causes of smurfing. And these are the reasons. This is the main reason why I can definitely not be playing AO2. But on top of this, as if what I've already told would not be enough, and it's already 15 minutes, obviously, with the videos and the small interruption, but the making the video, we already know how toxic this can become. Like, I have at least, I don't know if like 1400, you can see my profile, my game profile. I have hundreds of gameplays officially in the team ladder, like in the 4v4 games at least, and a few hundred games in the 1v1s. So I know how the business goes. I know how the trade goes. I have not come here yesterday or today's night or yesterday. I've been here for some time. I know how the thing goes. I know how the music plays in the orchestra. Don't come to me teaching what I already know. And one of the things we can deal is how to attack the Smurfs. We've seen the cause of Smurfing. Now it could be wise like to talk about how to tackle the Smurfing issue. But that's not the question. The question is the Smurfing problem is unaddressed. And if the Smurfing problem is unaddressed, these things only become more prevalent as time moves on. And obviously, you know what happens. Players leave the game. So we're not going to focus on what can be used to solve Smurfing, uh, because I believe that there is no political will to invest in attacking Smurfing accounts. The day where we see that, well, we might try to tackle into ways how to solve this. But of course, we can suggest a way to talk about these Smurf issues. Of course, there are games where you use the mobile phone verification and games where you use social security numbers, like countries where social security numbers are used to make sure that every player only one profile, not two, not 20, not 524 profiles, one player, one profile per player. That's it. But that's just another topic. And again, these are reactive videos, so we're just producing the kinds of things we're given. And don't tap in me. Don't see this wrong. I'm definitely on the side of the new players and the normal players because these are the ones who make the game going on. These are the ones that drive the engines. It's not the pro players who've been smurfing since kids and whose main hobby is just to stampede and bully other players who never had the opportunity to play AO2 the whole time because they had lives. And worse, they decided to kind of like take their life revenge through AO2, like disgusting, even more disgustingly, these scumbags. Please. And I've seen a lot of players getting discouraged and leaving the game because of smurfing. This is not just happening in AO2. It happens too in AO2. So let's not pretend that, oh, AO2 is the problem. No, the game is what you allow to happen in it. It's a problem of the internet behavior and unregulated internet behaviors. Now you might say, of course, it's just a game. Yeah, everything, if you decide to have that mentality, everything in life is just a game, everyone is just going to fight each other. Yeah, it's guaranteed. So, like, every game needs to have rules, and if rules are broken, there needs to be consequences. That's how I deal in life. That's how I was grown up to be. That's how it works. So, like, newsflash, sorry that you cannot understand that. It's how it works. So now we actually are going to address one of the final things here, which is the results of smurfing. I'm seeing this, if this is duplicate, maybe it's not. Exactly, it was not. So if this was not, we're going to just do this. This is obviously going for our YouTube video page. It's like a more, you can say, deeper analysis about the smurfing problem. But also we might be talking about other secondary form of harassments. Okay, so what we're going to change here, the results of smurfing. And now we're going to see what's happening as a result of smurfing. So I'm going to get this thing smaller. As a result of smurfing, you've seen that one of the main problems that players leaving the game. And let's not pretend this doesn't happen. This is happening, this has been happening, and this will continue to happen, and this will become even greater as time moves on. Because no one that is a normal player, a player in good faith, likes to face players whose main hobby is to just stomp them on the lobbies just to make themselves feel well about it. And that's also free harassment. They do it for the ego reasons. They don't like to face players whose main aim is just to stomp them. What kind of incentive? Let's just think a bit. What kind of incentive I would have to play a game where I'm going to face almost always an opponent whose main aim is to harass me as quickly as possible using spreadsheet plays and calculated things to streamline perfection more than years of gameplay ability. What is that? Instead of having a gameplay with a likewise matched opponent or similar opponent, you're going to face always someone much higher skilled, much more experienced than you could ever possibly become in the game. What? No, doesn't make any sense. So the players are tired of that shit. They're tired of playing against clowns. The players leave the game. And also, uh, people like, how you say, they lose confidence. This, if the the platforms that allow the video games do not attack the smurfing issues, then the players just feel that they're just wasting their time playing those video games. You lose confidence because you know that you're facing cheaters every time. You're facing game riggers. You're facing people who have no respect for you, who are just want to play the game to stampede, to steamroll, and to harass you as a result of much higher superior gameplay. You're not playing against normal players or like-minded players, or against pro players who are trying to teach you the basics and kind of like pushing you to some extent. No, you're facing constantly uh, highly professional players whose main source of satisfaction is just to harass you, to make sure you lose in as most humiliating way as possible in the game. And obviously, people don't like that. It's you don't like to be in an environment where it's not inclusive, where you're not respected, where you're constantly bullied. That makes any sense, right? That's where they leave the game. And not just leaving the game, they become mistrustful. And another issue, because like we could make uh, people also I would say uh, this is a consequence. And not just gamers. I would say this expect this kind of consequence. This is a natural reaction. For every like I think this is kind of like a law of physics. For every action, there is a reaction. So if you see gamers who smurf, if you see people who endorse smurfing or actions that constitute smurfing, if you see people that take no open stance against smurfing, expect the very victims, the very ones who've been suffering as a result of smurfing, to boycott as actively as possible every of those single ones who effectively have been smurfing, endorse smurfing, promote smurfing practices, or do not fight smurfing. And it's just choosing a side. You choose to be on the side of, I don't even say the bad guys, the scum, or you choose to be on the cleaner side of the honest players. You cannot choose to be both. If you've chosen both, you cannot choose both. You already have chosen the wrong side, and that's just what it is. But this is concerning the smurfing issue. Again, I don't see any way to solve this except by attacking smurfing. And for me, the main one thing that should be done concerning the smurfs is banning smurf accounts. So by banning smurf accounts, I don't say ban every new Smurf accounts you create because then you just create a new account and you continue to Smurf. I mean banning the players who Smurf. And that will already start to have an impact if players would suddenly be banned from playing the game, irrespective of the Smurf accounts they have, because they could not be Smurfing. Perhaps they should be using like you should use like a mobile phone verification, but I think Real ID would be the way to prevent this. Maybe making the games plus 18. And I know it's hard, but by making the game plus 18, this would force some threshold of responsibility, and it would make the players who would want to play that they have to abide by a certain set of rules. Now, I don't see that some teenagers have no sense of maturity, and that age guarantees you maturity. But from a certain age, like plus 18, you're expected to have knowledgeability of a minimal set of your online actions. Like when you're playing video games, you also know your contents. That's the point I want to stress out. Uh, and due to all this smurfing horror, which I've been describing, that's one of the reasons why I refuse to play. Because like m most of the times, for example, today, like I was playing my last session, I was I was constantly playing Smurfs. I was playing Smurfs the whole time. They harassed me in gameplay. I felt like in one or two cases I could do nothing. I was like being choked and cornered like a prey. It was like it was like a predator toying with the prey. toying with the prey, not killing it, toying it as many times as possible. Obviously, I cannot accept that kind of behavior. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And it's because I'm revolted against this kind of behavior that I decided to produce this kind of video, irrespective of the obstacles, irrespective of the hardships I faced before, of the horrors of the disgustingness I had to feel. You can check that previous AO2 stream how it was. It was the epitome of toxicity and like a new degree of toxicity. It's always been constantly surprising me for the negative, so kudos for that. And obviously, I could not stand with that. Now we'll just be finishing this, you know. Now we're going to add another small thing because we talk about most issues. Like, let's just hide those contents. To hide, it's easier for me. And this. Right. The one remaining thing that we still can't say is concerning harassment. So, what kind of harassment can we explain here? Harassment is also another problem that we constantly face. And this comes through, for example, a form of uh, toxic chat, like uh, insults, lying about your elo, lying about your identity, uh, like so many things. This is also another problem. It's also related to the Smurf issue, but it's even worse. It's the Smurfs that not just feeling happy enough harassing you in game, they need to harass you personally. They need to bully you even more. Harassment. I call this. It's similar, but I call this harassment and bullying. Just making this smaller. So this is exactly another problem. The toxic chats. You can say that, well, the toxic chat and insults are very similar. No, it's not, because a toxic chat is, for example, when you feel that you're matching a player that is a Smurf, you feel that he's just doing a Smurf kind of build, for example. He gets feudal age too fast, he attacks you with a tower rush, and instantly proceeds like with 2 or 3 towers. It's everything by the book. It's a spreadsheet calculated to the most perfect calculation, like it's too perfect. So it's like a perfect crime. And guess what? Perfect crimes don't exist. So it's just another busted game cheater, a clown. And you bust a clown. So when you start like spotting a Smurf, you kind of like directly uh, you tell the player you're a Smurf. It's like stop pretending you're not a Smurf. And when you do that, they reply with even toxic chats. So like these are the situations where you bust Smurfs. It's usually an important moment where in game you bust a Smurf, because once you bust a Smurf, you realize that you're no longer playing against an opponent that respects you. we'll place it here. I mean, there will not be any need of a lot of information concerning this slide. So once you bust Smurfs in game, either through chat, for example, you reveal to the chat in the enemy, you're a Smurf, or you're a Smurf account. There's no way you can play this well at this specific elo. Or you realize that, for example, he's Imperial Age before at 25 minutes of gameplay. It's a clear sign that it's someone who knows everything by the book. And usually, once you find a Smurf in the game, what happens is that the Smurf either dismisses you, he doesn't reply to you, and he gets even more toxic in the gameplay, he just continues to stampede you, or he just becomes toxic in chat and says, what's a Smurf? Obviously knows what's a Smurf. Or he says, I'm not a Smurf. Or worse, he will tell you, the one who's complaining, to be the Smurf. So he likes to mirror the same kind of charges you did against him. It's just smoke. You know, they just try to throw sand to your eyes, smoke. It's just to distract you. Once you bust a Smurf, you know that 100% that opponent is a Smurf. So you call him out. And the Smurf that does not like to be called out, he says, no, I'm not a Smurf. How do you know I'm a Smurf? He tries to make questions. He tries to make the devil's lair. And that's a clear sign you're facing a Smurf. And then things can get dirty. You say, no, you're a Smurf, because I know you. You're just too aggressive for this gameplay. It becomes too obvious. And they know that you're also hunting Smurfs, so they definitely can't pretend that they're not Smurfs. So they start to insult you. They start to laugh to you. They start to laugh from you. They say, oh, you make my day. Uh, I'm not a Smurf. You just play bad. They use childish forms of replies. Always replies that don't require 1+1. It's always about insulting and making you feel bad. And then, once you call them out, they are lying about their elo. Like, you say, oh, you're not an 800 elo player. You're at least 1600. You're at least 2K elo player. No, they say. I'm an 800 elo player. And you obviously know they're not. Because the Smurf, if he is playing under a 1K elo profile, if he's using 2.8K skills, he's a 2.8K player. It's not the yellow saying 800 on his Smurf profile that is going to uh, camouflage that fact. No. And obviously lying about their identity, because then you ask who you are, what's your real yellow, your real uh, game player identity, and they don't tell you. They continue to lie. So it shows the disrespect they have towards you, because you cannot respect an opponent that decides to hide uh, his identity from you. For example, if I was fighting, every time I was fighting, I was always fighting with my only profile. That's Timo Primus, right? And imagine what is if I'm fighting a profile that is someone who writes potato in his name, or the weakest player, and in fact is one of the top 100 players, if not one of the top 10 players of AO2, constantly harassing me. Disgusting. It's disgusting. Like, I might win him one time or another, but most of the times I will just lose. And obviously it's uninteresting. There is nothing to learn, it's just pure toxicity, and I'm not going to be complacent about it. So that's another problem I wanted to just tackle, the harassment and bullying that comes with the Smurf. There are also another secondary aspects, but these are like, instead of making a separate slide, we can just do something here, which is, I call it Hacking. Hacking is another problem. And what happens? What happens with hacking is that a player pretends to be a player, but he's not. So when you're facing a 1v1 opponent, you're not facing a normal player. You're facing a hacker disguised as a player. And one of the forms of disgusting hacking I've witnessed, and I've talked this about in previous videos, are namely the lags or slacks made by your opponent. Another one is force disconnections. You also saw that. I cannot make this smaller, I guess, to keep this. Force lags and force disconnections. You know how it happens. Sometimes you have the two, sometimes you just have one. But usually when there is a forced lag, it ends up with forced disconnections. And by forced disconnection, I mean it's the opponent that disconnects you. So it's like you can be subject to some form of hacking attack, like denial of service, where let's say you every time a player gives a command in order in Age of Empires, since this is real-time strategy, the orders are issued from your client, which is your computer, the laptop, or whatever PC you're playing. That order is sent to the battle server that registers the orders of each player in real time. For example, when you tell your builder to build a house, build a castle, to make men at arms, whatever, that is issued in the form of commands. Those commands are sent from your game client, from your client to the server, the battle server from Age of Empires. What happens is that the hacker, which could be a player, he will disrupt that direct communication between your client and the server so that the orders cannot be processed in real time. So he sends tons of packages and unsolicited packages into the battle server so that the server is unable to respond to your requests. Every time like you give a command, build a house, villager move right or left, these are commands. These are requests to the server. And what happens is that those hackers who are doing DDoS attacks, they flood they flood the server with uh, unsolicited requests so that the server cannot attend to the legitimate requests of the client. And he's forced to attend to the shady things that hacker is sending through the DDoS attacks. It's like imagine a bus. You're you have a specific bus that is made to just to make sure that you can come in, right? That bus, that bus is like the battle server, and he wants to collect specific passengers, which are like the commands you give in real time in AO2. And what happens is that these hackers, they like force hundreds, if not thousands of requests into that server so that he cannot respond to your game commands in real time. So it's like imagine like the passengers that should get into that bus are exactly prevented from entering that bus because the bus is suddenly flooded by a bunch of people that don't pay any tickets and that just come in to just make sure you cannot come into the bus. And that's exactly what happens through these forced DDoS attacks. We can add that. Like this is already you need to have substantial knowledge for this. This is not trivial knowledge, and it's not something you should learn. Uh, if not for to fight this. If you're learning to fight this, that's okay. But if you're learning to fight this, but you actually want to do this, then you just deserve all the consequences. That's it. Those are the forced lags and the forced disconnections. Now, the forced disconnections is another problem. It's like as a result of the lagging, after like 1 or 2 minutes, if the orders take too much time in reaching the server starts to assume that you have lost connection to the game, and so you're automatically disconnected. And imagine your internet is just working fine. But what happens is that the battle server was flooded by someone hacking it in order to disconnect you from the game. That's what the hacker does. He disconnects you from the game. And I had one of those. Like I think it was in the last game of today, like previously previous, AO2 explanation. There was I was facing a Khmer opponent, and as soon as like it used the chat to say, "Oh, there was a dirty hole," and I said, "Yes, there was a hole." And as soon after as I replied that, and I did so his castle, my game started to suddenly lag. It froze to death and it disconnected. So it was just exactly as soon as the opponent said, "Oh, you did found a hole into my defenses." And I replied to him, boom, I got instantly disconnected. I also realized that it barely had any military left, so I feel like he was just targeting me through hacking. I feel like he was not exactly committed in the game. He just forcefully disconnected. Now, how exactly he did that? Well, that's what a hacker does. He just annoys you. And that's also another problem. These are like the whole issues I've been like talking. First, the smurfing problem in the previous kind of like slide. Now, the harassment and bullying and the hacking. And all these three are driving forces that are making people leave this game. Uh, I'm just like, I'm not even sounding the bell alarms. This should be obvious. That something is already very wrong taking place in this game. I'm just going to publish this, in those videos. It might not be very flashy, it might not be uh, like the coolest thing in the world, but at least it's something true. It comes from my experience, which is a player that does not smurf, a player that is against rigging practices, against match fixing, against game riggings, and against using video games as a means to bully without any consequence or to make hacking operations through video games. I'm obviously against that, and I just want to state this very clear that I could be facing this experience like many others and just cut the game and that's it. But instead, I decided to talk about this, to confront the very people, the very toxic elements, the very toxic rats and scoundrels who are behind these problems. So until these issues are not tackled with, and they should be tackled with since yesterday, it's not a problem of tomorrow, it's already a problem that has been growing and exponentially, might I say. Uh, it's just time to attack all these issues, especially the Smurf issue. The day where Smurf accounts start to be banned like in the thousands, where you start to see players like no longer being able to play AO2 because they constantly create new profiles or they use their Smurf profiles to just harass lower elo players, then you might see some change in the game-based players. Until then, mostly more players will leave the game. It's just a reaction of it. Because obviously no one likes to be in a place where they say it's okay to harass lower elo players. It's like I don't know, it's all these things sound so wrong. And that's why I had to do a video about this. Well, this ends our explanations concerning the Age of Empires things, thematic. Uh, we might come like every time we feel the need to discuss any specific subject, we'll come here and it'll be pretty much straightforward. Uh, this obviously will be in my YouTube page there. Uh, I never expected that I would be, posting things about this, but guess what? I was forced to. I say that in this world, we can be free into some, uh, we might be free in some aspects, but 90% of aspects are highly conditioned. And the 90% of remaining actions here concerning this playability, they are a result of uh, the online conditioning. And I think it's toxic. So just in case, this is kind of like the last words. We'll be done for today concerning this video. Exactly. So this is our like final word. Uh, Now you might say, that's not true. I don't care. The fact that you already are hating on this tells a lot from where you come from. And this is my stance. No Smurf is going to take away these words. No liar, no scoundrel, no scum, no rat is going to change this. I don't like to face players where opponents have this practice of disrespecting me, or they feel well insulting or humiliating me as a result of not having had the same hours of gameplay they had. Instead of trying to either uh, making it as even as possible or as competitive possible, they try to make this as unfair as possible. I don't like that. And in real life, that's how I cut people from, that's how I see that these people don't make friends, don't make people I can have in my social circles. The very first day I see someone who feels well harassing others or says that they want my well-being, but in fact they just they take satisfaction in things going wrong towards me, or they say that, oh, we actually want you well, we wish you well, but they feel well with your arm. That's when I cut these pieces of shit. I don't have tolerance for these kinds of behavior. So these are like my final words concerning year two. We will not be changing that. You know that we're very strict concerning these policies. If we see major changes, then we might start to give it a look. But for now, we will be playing other games where these practices are not as prevalent or not as toxic. And I've seen this already from some years ago, but it just got worse. I just guess I just needed my 10 or 12 days of COVID to realize what has been going on in this game. Like after 12 days of COVID, I realized how toxic it has grown in the space of 2 to 3 weeks. I've never seen as toxic, as prevalent attitudes as I'm seeing currently in this game. And obviously, I'm not going to be complacent about it. Maybe this is just an incidental video. Maybe no one else will talk about this issue. But guess what? I'm not nobody, and I'm already the first to talk about this. Maybe there will be more reactive people, more people perhaps leaving the game. It's on their choice. I'm not saying you leave the game or not. To everyone his own. I'm just saying that there is no conditions to play this game because it's not a game right now. It's completely clown. It's a completely clown stage, and I don't like clowns. I don't like clowns. That's I think that they are the problems. We have too many clowns today. That's it. We're going eventually to do other kinds of streams now. We're going to pass into other subjects. This will be a very separate video. So we will not retrieve any of the words we said concerning Smurfs. This just be a confirmation of all the things I already said. And if you decide to join against the Smurf issue, so be it. And if you don't, well, I'm sorry, you're the problem. See you.